Hi again then guys, and welcome to episode 13 of Visions of Tomorrow, the review series for Gran Turismo's selection of, as the name pretty much implies, the Vision GT concept cars that are currently, at least, featured on Gran Turismo, in particular Gran Turismo 6, although from what we've seen, the Vision GT program is still going to be an influence and included in Gran Turismo Sport. To what degree, we don't know, but it is going to be included, that we know. In this particular episode, we're featuring the second of 3 SRT Vision GTs currently featured on the game. We've already featured the Tomahawk S, which is of course the base model. Now we're featuring the middle ground model, the GTS-R, which is the more track-focused version. And at a future time, we will of course feature the ultimate version, the X. But for this particular episode, as I said, we are discussing the GTS-R. Now I believe I've mentioned on the channel before, and I've definitely mentioned to individuals that I've raced with online, that I personally think that the GTS-R version of the Tomahawk is kind of the unnecessary one of the three. It falls into a bit of a no man's land because the PP is still far too high to be relevant, but at the same time it's no way near quick enough to take on the X. So it kind of falls into, as I said, for me at least, a bit of a no man's land. It's just not a car that I use at all, really. The Tomahawk X is useful for obvious reasons. It's extremely OP and by far the fastest car in the game. The Tomahawk S, on the other hand, also has very distinct uses. It's extremely fast for its power, and more importantly, it can be used as a genuinely competitive, PP relevant, say 700 PP track car, and it's very good at that. The GTS-R, on the other hand, being as it is 870 PP, just isn't relevant enough. People aren't going to allow it into lobbies up against vehicles of a similar PP, such as the Formula Gran Turismo. It's just not a fair match. So to have this vehicle at all seems kind of a waste of time. Now, to be clear, I know that there are fans of this car who are going to immediately dislike this review, and I am not saying that this is a bad car by any means. Ironically enough, I would say that the main problem with the GTS-R is that the X exists. If there was no Tomahawk X, the GTS-R would be an amazing machine, and it would actually be the fastest car in the game. But the fact that the X version is not just better, but so much better, means that this car just loses all relevance. Now, it does have some particular ways in which it is the best of the three. In one way in particular, the weight. The GTS-R is the lightest of the three Tomahawks. The S weighs 921 kilos, the X weighs 749, and this weighs only 663. So it is significantly lighter than both of the other models, and it is still a very powerful machine. It's powered by a similar 7-litre naturally aspirated engine as the other two models. It puts out over 1500 horsepower with an oil change, 1506 to be exact, and around 750 foot-pounds of torque, which is, interestingly enough, actually more than the X version. It also puts out 2,271 horsepower per tonne, which is massive. That really is up there with the best of the Red Bulls. And the performance is very good. The top speed is in excess of 350 miles per hour. The acceleration is, of course, insanely quick. And around the track, it can annihilate anything less than a Tomahawk X or a Red Bull X2010 or X2011 or X2014. So it's an extremely fast car. It's definitely not a bad car by any means. It's just almost too good for its own good. Because if, as I said, if this were the X model, it would be great, but it's not. So you have to factor that in. The fact that the PP sits as it does at 870 just makes the car almost irrelevant. Now, the price tag is 1,000,000 credits, which is the same as the other two Tomahawks, and the same as most of the VGTs. Not all of them, but most of them. And for 1,000,000 credits, the value for money is insanely good, as with all three of them. But overall, would I recommend buying the Tomahawk GTS-R? Well, kind of yes and no, to be honest. Because if you're looking for a good way to spend 1,000,000 credits on a race car that will be useful to you in online races, maybe in career mode as well, something with a good mix of performance, handling, etc., then no, you shouldn't buy it, because the PP is just far too high for it to be useful. You can't use it in any of the career mode races, and most people in online lobbies won't be interested in racing against a GTS-R Tomahawk, not unless they're driving the same car, and people rarely do. If, however, you just like the Tomahawk in general, or, like me, you're just a collector, then I would recommend it, because in its own way, it is a good model, considering that it does have over 1,000 horsepower less than the X model. Does mean that in the rare occurrence where you have a power limited lobby, it can come in useful. But that's pretty much the only circumstance where it can, apart from, of course, one-make racing. Around the track, to be honest, the weight advantage also means very little. It's cool and all that it weighs less, but the Tomahawk X is so quick anyway that you don't really notice much of a difference around corners. It might be a little bit easier to drive, but that's mainly because it has, as I mentioned before, around 1,000 horsepower less to deal with, so of course it's going to be easier to drive. Overall, if you're looking for a usable racer, I wouldn't recommend it. But as I said, if you're a collector or just like the Tomahawk, then I would. But that's it overall for this particular pick. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, thanks for watching.